about the fascinating life of Hildegard von Bingen, also known as Sibyl of the Rhine. Hildegard von Bingen was an accomplished 12th century nun. She's known as a visionary, a composer, a writer, a theologian, a prophetess, and is a recognized saint in the Roman Catholic Church. She's a fascinating character from the Middle Ages, and one I hope that you will enjoy learning about with me. I find her just to be so interesting. So in her childhood, Hildegard von Bingen was born in the Palatine County of the Rhine, which is part of modern Germany now, in 1098, though we do not know the exact date. She was the 10th child born to Hildebert and Mechthild, or as far as we know, she was the 10th child born. Actually, a popular legend says that she was the 10th child, and she was dedicated to the church as a tithe, which was done according to the custom of the day with the 10th child. However, her earliest biographer, a monk who had served as her secretary, wrote, quote, "Her parents, although wealthy and engaged in worldly affairs, were not unmindful of the gifts of the Creator and dedicated their daughter to the service of God. For when she was yet a child, she seemed far removed from worldly concerns, distanced by precocious purity." So she was sent to the monastery at Baden-Württemberg at the age of 8 years old, and she was given into the care of a young noblewoman who had also joined the monastery at the same time, named Jetta. They were walled in together at the monastery in an enclosure in 1106. So they were walled in, literally, there was no door, they were shut in, and there was a window for them to communicate with the priests at the monastery. So that must have been, well, I would have been freaked out personally, but well, now we're all kind of walled in right now. So, you know, I guess she would have been okay right now. But if you can just imagine in 1106, so she was 8 years old, she gets walled in with this woman that she's not met before, and that's where she's going to spend the rest of her life. So Hildegard spent her late childhood and young adult life within the enclosure at that monastery, Baden-Württemberg, and she was learning the 10-string psaltery and the psalms from Jetta. Now, it's believed that Jetta taught Hildegard the basics of reading, but beyond that, she didn't receive any formal education. It's speculated that Hildegard and Jetta had a close relationship, but Hildegard herself is quiet on the matter. When Jetta died in 1136, so 30 years later, Hildegard does not even make mention of the event in her writings of her life, which scholars actually find odd as they spent so much time together, and Jetta was a stand-in mother figure to Hildegard. So actually, I am researching this further. I'm trying to find out more about Jetta herself, and I'm hoping that I can possibly give a class later on Jetta and her life and her relationship specifically with Hildegard, because I feel the best way to know people is also to know their contemporaries and the people that they spent their time with. So during their time at the monastery, Jetta possessed such renown that she attracted additional women to the enclosure's convent. So it's believed the monastery had to enlarge the space to accommodate the new nuns. This increased drastically once Hildegard confided in Jetta that she received, quote, heavenly visions. So Jetta then confided this to a monk at the monastery, believed by most scholars to be the monk Volmar, who would play an important role in Hildegard's life and eventually become her secretary and, to a degree, her confidant. Now, Hildegard actually hid her visions for many years from others, afraid and even embarrassed. She later wrote about them, recalling that her first vision occurred at the age of 3 years old when she saw such a great light that my soul quaked, as what she wrote. So at the time of Jetta's death in 1136, Hildegard, who was at that point, math is hard, but math is really hard, 38? Yeah, 38 years old. Hildegard was unanimously voted in as the unofficial abbess, as they were technically not an official convent, so she was unofficial, but she was official, and she took over the charge of running the convent. So at the age of 38, Hildegard began to flourish with her newfound power and perhaps even some freedom that she didn't possess prior to that. If you think about it, she spent her entire life in the enclosure with Jetta, who was in charge, and some of the other nuns, and the only contact they had, again, was with the monks who would come to the window, so father confessors. And then I do know that, according to scholars, people would come to consult with Jetta to get her advice on life matters and on spiritual matters. But it's still such a small number of people that they interacted with on a day-to-day basis. At the age of 43, so just 5 years later, Hildegard received a vision commanding her to write what she saw. Out of humility and fear, she refused to follow the command. And then she was overtaken by an illness, forcing her to her bed. So, not a great idea. It wasn't until she agreed to start writing her visions down that she was freed from the illness. So it's not known precisely how she wrote her visions, whether she wrote them on a wax tablet and then had Volmar, the monk, transcribe them onto vellum, or whether she dictated them directly to Volmar and he wrote them, or if she herself wrote them on vellum and then Volmar went in and fixed her grammar. Because if you think about it, she was not well educated. She learned how to read from Jetta, and she learned how to play the 10-string psaltery and the Psalms, but that's about it. So there's many different portrayals of Hildegard and Volmar together. And one of the pictures is in my handout that's going to get uploaded. And in it, you can see Hildegard, and it looks like she's holding a wax tablet, and Volmar, who is transcribing onto vellum. And then there's also like the Holy Spirit is represented via fire flames kind of coming down over her head. It's very interesting. Actually, in her writings, Hildegard bemoans her lack of education, and she states repeatedly that all of her knowledge came from a voice in heaven. Although she says she's uneducated, it is clear that too many, that she had at least a good knowledge of Latin, because all of her writings were in Latin rather than her native German. One scholar actually suggests that perhaps her secretary Volmar fixed her grammar for her, but she at least knew enough Latin to sing the psalms and hymns of the Roman Catholic Church at the time. Now, I believe it's important to note that all of Hildegard's music and writings were created at or after the age of 44, which is a feat in and of itself. In the modern age, we may view that as middle life, but in the 12th century, the life expectancy was closer to the 60s. Hildegard herself actually lived to be age 81, and she never stopped writing during that time. Her first major work of note was titled Scivias. Now, the title comes from the Latin phrase Scito vias Domini, which means know the ways of the Lord. It took her a total of 10 years to write it, and it includes 26 of her visions. While she was in the middle of writing it, Pope Eugene III found out about her and sent an envoy to investigate. The envoy actually brought her partially written Scivias back to Pope Eugene III to read, and he in turn took it to the Synod of Trier, which took place in the year 1147, the month of November, through the year 1148, the month of February, and he read it to the assembled prelates there. He then gave Hildegard his personal seal of approval and commanded her to continue with her writings, as well as give her his blessing to speak in public on matters of faith. Now, that's a big deal for the Pope to give permission to a woman, a nun, to publicly speak on spirituality. It's a really big deal. I don't know that that's happened elsewhere. It might have happened with one of her other contemporaries, but I'm still digging in a little bit deeper for that. She was actually emboldened by this. So Hildegard continued her work, thank goodness, and she began writing letters to people of such renown as Pope Anastasius IV, Emperor Frederick I of Barbarossa, and Saint Bernard of Clairvaux. So Scivias was written between the years 1142 and 1152. And again, it was Hildegard's first visionary theological work. The next work that she composed was the Ordo Virtutum, and it was composed in 1151, and it was actually a morality play on the 16 virtues working against the devil. It was literally written for her nuns to perform, and it's the first known morality play to have ever been written. And of course, not only was it a play, but it includes music. The next piece that she wrote was Liber Vitae Meritorum, and that was written between the years 1158 and 1163. And it was her second volume of visionary theology. So she never stopped. Once she started, she just never stopped writing. And her final work, or her final theological visionary work, was Liber Divinorum Operarum. And that was written between 1163 and 1174. So she started writing in 1142, and her last major work was written in 1174. So 32 years of writing. Now, at the time, the convent grew even larger after Jetta's death, and once Hildegard started becoming known. And the space at Disembodemberg could not accommodate the needs of the convent. So Hildegard determined to leave the monastery and start her own convent at Rupertsburg. She petitioned the abbot at the time, Abbot Cluno, who at first refused her requests. It's suggested by many scholars that the monastery at Disembodemberg benefited from the nuns' dowries, as they were all noble women, and the abbot didn't want to lose that revenue, which makes sense. Families at the time, if they had noble women who were part of a monastery or convent, they would give their dowries to those monasteries, sort of like a tithe. Hildegard, again, took ill to her bed when he refused her, and she was unable to move. It was not until the abbot himself went into the enclosure and tried to move her head without success that he relented. So it was decided that she was to take her nuns to Rupertsburg. So they made the move in either the year 1148 or 1150, we're not sure. And Hildegard at that time would have been 50 or 52 years old. So she's leaving her life behind, everything she's ever known from 8 years old until 50 or 52. And she's literally leading all of her nuns to a place they've never been before to start their own convent. At the time, Hildegard faced difficulties as the leader with the move. She brought with her between 18 to 20 nuns. All of them were noble women. But they moved from a solid and stable life at Disembodemberg to a convent that was not even fully rebuilt. The convent at Rupertsburg needed serious repairs, and it only had a modest clearing that was made livable temporarily for the nuns upon their arrival. It was up to Hildegard to supervise reconstruction while also handling the politics of keeping her current nuns and their families happy so that she would not lose their dowries and support. So Hildegard conducted 4 separate preaching tours throughout Germany's Rhineland during this time as well. She preached not only to clergy and laity, but also in public, calling for reform to clerical corruption. This is really a testament to her popularity, as in the 12th century, just women did not preach publicly, but she was allowed to. One way in which Hildegard obtained funds for running Rupertsburg, actually, was by allowing nobles nearby to obtain burial plots on the convent grounds in exchange for funds. This led to some conflict with the church closer to the end of her life. An interdict was placed on her convent by the clergy of Mainz because she allowed the burial of a nobleman on the grounds who the clergy had argued had been excommunicated and thus could not be interred on consecrated grounds. They demanded he be disinterred and removed. Well, Hildegard refused. She stated he had repented and his sins had been forgiven. So the canons authorized civil authorities to dig up the body, but on the evening before their arrival, Hildegard, vested in her attire as abbess, went to the grave, blessed it, and then with the help of her nuns, removed all of the cemetery markers and stones, so the plot of the excommunicated man could not be identified. As a result, her convent was forbidden from singing the divine office or celebrating mass. So they kind of really came down hard on her for that, but it was pretty bold of her to do that. She wrote letters to the Archbishop Christian of Mainz requesting he rescind the interdicts. She wrote in the letter that the man had been absolved and reunited with the church, and she was willing to offer witnesses to that fact. As of March 1179, the interdict was lifted by the archbishop, at which point she lived her remaining life in relative peace, and she passed away in September of 1179. Unfortunately, we have very little record of her passing other than a brief writing by a monk named Theodoric, who obtained the information from her nuns. He wrote she had a quote-unquote joyful transition to the heavenly bridegroom. Now, I've left off discussing Hildegard's music because it's important to understand the person behind the compositions. Plus, her music really deserves its own class, so stay tuned. I want to point out again that she was uneducated. She did not receive any form of music education except to learn to sing the chants and hymns for the divine office. Because of this, it is even more impressive to me that she not only wrote her own music, but it survived and celebrated even to this day. It's important to note that Hildegard's music, when compared with her contemporaries, is considered to be very different, even avant-garde. Perhaps because she lacked formal training, she didn't know to follow the rules of music at the time. And so we're gifted with beautiful pieces containing soaring vocals and text that paints a picture and matches with the music. Her music is classified as pneumatic, meaning she ascribes multiple notes to an individual syllable, generally between 2 to 4, as opposed to syllabic, meaning each syllable gets one note. She does go into melismatic territory at times, though, meaning she ascribes many notes to a single syllable, leading to an elaborate sound to her pieces. Oftentimes in her songs, they'll start out with just the word O, and it's oh, and it goes on and on and on. So she really does like to have that grand melismatic experience, at least in the beginning and sprinkled throughout her pieces. One last comment I'll make about her music regarding here is she employs a wide vocal range in all of her music, which would put a strain on the average vocalist. She also incorporates large jumps from one note to another, again, not necessarily easy for the average singer. So Hildegard von Bingen led a full life in the Middle Ages, leaving a rich legacy behind. From researching her life and reading some of her writings, to me, she possessed a strong personality, of one who stood for what she believed and would not back down. She led and inspired others and was tireless in her work as a writer. Her music has survived 9 centuries, and it's beloved by the world today. I would argue she's one of the most important female composers, if not one of the most important composers, regardless of gender, from the 12th century. Based on the biographies of her life, it is obvious to me that she made her own path, even while adhering to her chosen religion's commandments. And to me, she is proof that you can live your life to your fullest potential no matter where you start in life. That didn't take very long because no one was asking questions during it. Does anyone have questions now?
I'm the thing. Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm all right. You mentioned her visions, and I was late logging on and missed what her visions were.
So her visions are detailed in her works, Scivias, Liber Vita Meritorum, and Liber Divinorum Operum. And her visions consisted of, I didn't even write about that, but they're consisting of her receiving visions of basically usually the Virgin Mary or humanity represented as this or that, and they basically to her are detailed as comments on spirituality and on different sins that humanity makes. So that's a great question. I should actually add that to my class because I need to expound a little bit more on what her visions were. I do have some excellent reading materials on my handout for people who are interested that really go in depth to what her different visions were. She had so many, so very many. I honestly don't know how she kept up with them.
Becca?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Okay. All right. What do you think is the like for you personally, what do you find most inspirational about her during this time?
Oh, Lord. Most inspirational. Well, she really had gumption. And it's clear to me that she was a little stubborn, but she had a clear view of what she wanted, and she stuck to it, and she stood up for herself. And, as a woman, as a female, I don't always do a good job of sticking up for myself. So I really appreciate that in a time when women really had no power, that she took that power and she made a life for herself, and shared not only but shared her work with the rest of the world. Nora, you had a question?
Yep, sorry. My husband walked in. He's trying to bake for the first time by himself.
Ooh.
So we'll see how that goes. So my question was, you said you're going to do a whole class on her music then? That's just
I would like to, yes. I would like to.
I went to school for voice performance, and we actually did learn some of her stuff and learned about her stuff. So that's why I found it so interesting you were doing a class on her, because I was like, oh, she was so cool.
Yes, her music is gorgeous. I've sung just a couple of her pieces, and it's actually, if you like, I can sing one of her pieces just so you can hear what it sounds like, because with this setup in my normal class, when I'm like face to face with people and in the same room with them, I actually am playing her music in the background, but I couldn't figure out how to do that here. Would you like to hear her song?
Yes, please.
Okay. Hang on, let me pull it up. I don't know it by heart because it's like all crazy. So this is a piece titled O Igni Spiritus Parakliti. It's written about the Holy Spirit. And I'll just do a portion of it because all her songs are long. And then I'll give you the English translation of the lyrics to kind of give an idea of what's it. I should probably have warmed up. It's fine. It's going to be great. If it doesn't sound good, it's the technology and not me. Okay. O igni spiritus parakliti, vitae omnis creaturae, sanctus es vivificando formans, sanctus es ungendo periculos se fractos, sanctus est tergendo fetida vulnera. O spiraculum sanctitatis, O ignis caritatis, odus is gustus in pectoribus, et infusio cordium in bona odore virtutum. O fons purissimus, in quo consideratur, quam Deus alienus colligit et perditos requirit. So the lyrics are, O fire of the Spirit and defender, the life of every life created, holy are you, giving life to every form. O breath of holiness, O fire of love, O taste so sweet within the breast that floods the heart with virtue's fragrant good. O clearest fountain in which is seen the mirrored work of God, to gather the estranged and seek again the lost. From you the clouds flow forth, the wind takes flight, the stones their moisture hold, the waters rivers spring, and earth veritity, I don't know what that means, exudes. And so may you be praised, who are the sound of praise, the joy of life, the hope and potent honor, and the giver of the gifts of light. That's one of my favorite pieces of hers. And you can really hear from the poetry that she wrote and the musicality of her piece, how it flows together and it gives life, I think, to her music. Any other questions about Hildegard von Bingen? Who wants me to email my actual notes?
I would.
Okay. How do we go about doing that? Are you on the Facebook group?
I am now, yes.
Okay. If you would, I'm going to post something, or I'm going to get Andreas to post something in there saying, hi, it's me, so that you have my name and you can PM me your email so that it's not just out there for anyone to have.
Okay.
If that works
You
for
can
you.
also comment on the event itself. You should be able to comment on the event and just say, hey, I'd like the handout.
Okay.
And we'll make it, once I get it uplinked to the Google Drive, we'll make the links available.
That would be great. Right now, it does say under discussion, post permissions for this event have been turned off for guests.
Yeah, we'll turn them on.
Thank you. Any other questions or thoughts? Does anyone else have any stories about Hildegard von Bingen or music from the 12th century? I love the 12th century.
I was about to ask you about her more the apothecary herbology type. So have you gotten much into that?
So that's included in some of the books that I've been reading. Just for the sake of time, I didn't include that in this class, but yes, not only did she write about her visions and write music and preach and write on theology, she also wrote about medicine and herbal medicine. And so she has no education in any of this, but somehow she was able to put together books that assisted with the medicine of the time. And many people actually went to monasteries when they were ill or needed help with something. So it makes sense that she would learn a little bit that way. I'm not entirely certain how she learned it yet. I'm still trying to dig into that because I'm fascinated. My dad's a doctor, and so, you know, he went through so many years of school. And so obviously she didn't, but no one died, so that's good. I hope they didn't die. But she wrote a lot of, I think, 2 or 3 books on medicine as well. So she was busy. She was very busy. Busier than me, let's be honest.
Hi, Honor. Question.
Hi, go ahead.
So it sounds like she was also, Hildegard was fairly politically active, at least, you know, having a sort of public presence and preaching. Do you know if she wrote any of her ideas down anywhere in like a book or a codex or something?
Well, she has a Risen Codex that is a period piece. So all of her works were put into the Risen Codex, which actually, if you want, I can send a link to it. The museum that has it actually has a viewable page-by-page form of it, which is fantastic because it has all of her music and it has her writings. Of course, it's in Latin. But yes, I don't know if she was political necessarily, but she was theological. So she wrote letters, not only to the 3 that I mentioned in my class, but to countless people. And she had no problem telling people if she thought they were wrong and if they were messing up. So she was very spirited in that manner. And there are some letters that survived of back and forth between her and some people, especially Saint, what was his name? I can't even remember. Saint of Clairview. But actually, this is kind of funny. It's not in my class, but there was another abbess that wrote a letter to Hildegard, and it was a little snippy. There was some drama going on. And so supposedly, although I haven't been able to confirm this yet, so take it with a grain of salt, Hildegard let her nuns go around with unadorned hair. So she actually let them have their hair flowing long and no veils, no head coverings at all, with crowns of flowers. So this abbess wrote condemning her for it in a very nice backhanded way, basically saying, you know, how dare you, this isn't following the preachings of our order. And so there's a spat between the two of them. They wrote back and forth, and they were just like, wow. So that abbess really didn't like Hildegard. So there were people who didn't like her. She was very polarizing. And I think it's fascinating to read the letters to kind of see, oh, okay, so yeah, when you stand up for yourself, some people aren't going to like it. Any other questions? I'm seeing a lot of no's.
Another question.
Oh, you have a question? Yes, then. Hi.
Actually, no, not a question, but I just wanted to let you know, well, first of all, very beautiful singing voice. But I don't know if you saw, I had William on my lap. And the whole, like, at first he's busy kicking, and you start to sing, and then he just, like, settled down and was, like, mesmerized by you. And if you saw me laughing at one point, it's because he started to hum along, or trying to hum along, and it was so cute. But anyways, I just wanted to say,
it makes
really
me happy
pretty
anytime there's babies in choir, because they'll, like, try to sing along with the amens or the Lord have mercies, and I'm just like, it's so cute. My niece is 7 years old now, and she started singing along a little bit, and it just makes me very happy. That's a heart there. So,
yeah.
Well, I really appreciate
Wonderful
everyone
class.
coming to my class virtually. I hope you're all well, you're all safe, and that you're not bored out of your minds. I really appreciate this opportunity and the fact that I got to see some of your faces and some names that I don't know. So I hope that when all this clears up, we can actually meet in person and talk about art and music and the SCA in general. Find me on Facebook. I'm Becca Casey, and I would love to get to know you guys better. And yeah, I'm attending the Tiara Fairy Social after this, so I actually have to glam up a little bit because this ain't so much. So anyways, anything else? Thank you guys. Have a lovely rest of your evening.